Oh, hello everybody out there. This is David Laird. I work for Syngenta Crop Protection. Tonight I'm going to be moderating a session on the Resistance Roundtable sponsored by Syngenta. I am the head of our product biology team for North America, and basically what my team does is work on the early development of new chemistry in our pipeline, and I would say we have a very exciting pipeline at the moment. The other thing that we do work on is pest resistance management plans and helping the business and our customers as well understand and cope with resistance issues to pests. And that's what we're here about tonight, is to have this resistance roundtable discussion. In 2009, Syngenta introduced the Resistance Fighter Leadership Program, and the program is really aimed at, has been aimed at herbicide weeds and discussing issues with herbicide-resistant weeds with managers and advisors that work in the industry on the ground and are face-to-face with growers, helping them manage these issues. We've expanded it a little bit to include disease resistance and insect resistance, but I expect most of the discussion tonight will be on herbicide-resistant weeds, although we can certainly go into disease and insect resistance as well. The leadership program at Syngenta really is all about helping its members and people that become resistant fighters under the program to enrich their careers and better serve their growers through really allowing them this type of industry interaction that allows them to share information and best practices and also to give them industry exposure to other people that are involved with the call. So if there are viewers out there that are interested in the Syngenta Leadership Program, we do have a website, www.resistantfighter.com, where you can go and put your information there. An application for the 2015 program, it's not open yet, but will be open shortly. And you can enter your information and you'll receive a notification when the application portal is open, and you can apply for the 2015 Resistant Fighter Program. And we would highly encourage you to do that. With that background, I would like to kick it off tonight and introduce our participants. We have two gentlemen, resistant fighters, that are not going to be able to make it tonight, Scott Holder and Scott Stahlbaumer. They're out due to scheduling conflicts, and so they will not be joining us tonight. But tonight we do have two other folks joining us, Jeremy Kilsher and Paul Barchinger. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jeremy. Jeremy, just share with us where you're from, and what year you joined the Resistant Fighter Program, your current employer and job title, and why are you passionate about pest resistance, and in particular herbicide-resistant weeds?
Okay. I'm Jeremy Kickler. I'm the County Extension Coordinator with the University of Georgia in Moultrie, Georgia, which is Colquitt County. I was awarded the Resistance Fighter back in 2009. I think Paul was the same class as I was back then. So we've been kind of around. We've been dealing with resistance for quite a while. But I was the county agent when I was in Macon County. I moved down here to Colquitt County in March, but we've been dealing with weed resistance here in Georgia for over 10 years. So it's a big issue, not only here in the county but also the state.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Paul, can you give us introduce yourself and tell us when you joined the program and who your current employer is, and your job title, and why you're passionate about weed resistance issues?
Yes, thank you. I'm Paul Barchinger. I was Resistance Manager and Resistance Fighter winner in 2009, along with Jeremy, as you mentioned. From south central Minnesota, about 50 miles straight west of Minneapolis, St. Paul, to give you a little idea of where we're at on the map. I work for Hutchinson Co-op. I'm the agronomy division manager and oversee 3 retail agronomy locations. The reason I'm passionate about resistance management is most of our growers, all of our growers come to me and want suggestions as far as controlling weeds and that on their farm. And obviously, resistance is a problem because our old tools that we've used for years just aren't doing the job anymore. And working towards farmers' success. If a farmer is successful, I'm successful. Part of that success has to be maximizing yields by keeping their crops clean, coming up with different solutions that as we have developed resistant weeds probably back as far back as 2004.
So you've been dealing with this issue for some time then. Also tonight we have 3 of our media partners joining us to participate in the discussion and ask questions to our resistance fighters. They are Gil, Carol, and Willie, and I would ask that Gil start and give his current employer and job title and the geography that he covers.
You're going to really have to speak up because you're just barely coming through, but I think it's
all right, thanks for telling me. I'll try to speak a little louder.
I want to, Paul is in the blue shirt, and who's in the cap?
That's Jeremy.
Jeremy, okay, gotcha.
Okay, and Gil, who are you working for, and what geography are you
Successful
covering?
Farming Magazine.
Okay. And then Carol, can you introduce yourself and tell us who you work for and what geography you cover, please?
Yes, I'm Carol Smith, and I work for One Grower Publishing. We publish Cotton Farming Magazine, Rice Farming, the Peanut Grower, Soybean South, and Corn South. And I cover the entire cotton belt for cotton farming and the entire rice belt for rice farming. And then for corn, soybeans, and peanut, it's the southern geography.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And then Willie, can you introduce yourself and tell us what geography you cover?
I'm Willie Vogt. I'm the Director of Content and User Engagement for Pet and Farm Progress, and we are the publishers of the Farm Press family of magazines that cover the South, and the Midwest group is Pet and Farm Progress, which is the Midwest magazines. You know us as The Farmer, Paul, and Jeremy, you know us as Southeast Farm Press as one of our books, and then also we have Corn and Soybean Digest, Farm Futures, Farm Industry News as other crop books. I work for all of those, and then I have people on those do a good job of, and they've been following resistance as long as I can remember, so this is a big deal for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much, Willie. So, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to allow Paul and Jeremy to talk about their experiences in 2014 and before, if they would like, and talk about what they've seen out there this year and the particular issues that they've had to deal with, and what that means for them as they plan to battle resistant weeds. And so maybe the best thing is just to open it up and let Jeremy kind of comment a little bit on the 2014 season and what he saw out there and what the issues were and what he's planning to implement for 2015. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, in 2014, down here in the South, we had a very, very wet spring. We had some issues with tremendous amount of rainfall during planting time, and for example, in cotton, we just had so much rain that our residuals just kind of gave out on us. So we had to rely on our post-emerge applications such as our Liberty or if you were in a Roundup Ready system, maybe our Staples, to try to get by with our, try to control glyphosate resistant palmer around down here. We had to do a lot of hand weeding around in this area, just to manage the seed bank, and then it just got dry on us, in the summertime. June, July, August was very dry. It hurt our dryland peanut yields quite a bit, and also some of our dryland cotton yields were suffering quite a bit too. Next year, we're going to try to educate our growers a little bit more on this dicamba technology that's coming out. There's a lot of play in the media about it, and we're just trying to figure out how to educate growers on that technology.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Do you want to give us a brief statement of your issues in 2014 and your plans for 2015?
Oh, what was that again?
I'm sorry, you may not be able to hear me. I was saying, Paul, can you give us some comments on your 2014 season and your plans for 2015?
Well, I'm going to repeat a lot of the things Jeremy just said, but here in west central Minnesota, we were extremely wet too this growing season. As a matter of fact, the county I'm in and the surrounding 2 or 3 counties around us, about 40% of the crop planted this year. Got to the 4th of July, obviously it's time for us to have corn. Beans did go in after that, and they yielded okay, but we had a lot of plant this year. So we were dealing with a lot of weed issues. As a matter of fact, some of the ground that did not get planted, most guys did try to put in a cover crop of some kind. Some did not. And before some of that ground was worked, before a cover crop was put in, oats for the most part, we went out and did a lot of spraying, a lot of tillage was done and those kind of things. Did a pretty decent job controlling those weeds, although there was probably 20 to 25% of the guys that did absolutely nothing with their preventative plant acres. And in some cases, it was so wet all summer they didn't have any choice. So a lot of giant ragweed, which we've been battling resistant giant ragweed up here since 2004. One thing we learned this summer, Jeremy alluded to the dicamba-resistant beans and the 2,4-D cold-resistant soybeans. We're probably in our geography at least 2, if not 3 years away from seeing both of those technologies. And from our experience this summer, I hope that they do indeed have the volatilization and the drift concerns addressed, because we did a lot of spraying with a lot of the LVs, the LV4, the LV6s, and those kind of things. And I should have known better as an experienced agronomist, but you can't spray those type of products when it's 90 degrees outside. And I learned this year probably the hard way a couple of times. And even some of my applicators said, well, gee, Paul, we've sprayed 2,4-D forever. Why are we having such an issue this year? And I reminded them, yeah, we're spraying that in May and early June. We're not spraying it in late June, July, when we've got heat and humidity, and the potential for volatility and drift is just so much greater. So there again, I think those are 2 promising technologies. We're looking forward to getting our hands on them. But yet we did learn the hard way, or were reminded the hard way, spraying those kinds of products in July. It's a very sticky, or can be a very sticky situation. We also learned, too, probably to no one's surprise, that, as I said, some of these fields that did not get planted really turned into a jungle. Some of it was 6, 8 feet tall. Some of it was getting so big that even with their booms all the way up in the air, we could barely get over top of it. And believe it or not, even 1.5 to 2x rate of an LV6, LV4 type product does not control giant ragweed when it's that big. It just will not kill it. It dinged it enough, it knocked it down enough that the guys could get in there with their tillage equipment and get it through the disc, the field cultivator, what have you. But there again, it's just an emphasis on getting after these weeds small, early and often, is kind of my calling card in this geography as far as weed control goes.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Are there any questions from our media partners at this point for either Paul or Jeremy?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Question for Jeremy. Okay. Jeremy, this is a 2-part question. First, are Georgia farmers, do you think they're more willing to budget additional dollars for herbicide programs to fight these resistant weeds? What's your strategy for helping producers put together effective programs for individual farmers? You know, is it there? I guess I'm saying I don't think there's a one program fits all scenario, is there?
No, ma'am. Compared to before herbicide resistance, I would say back before 2004, and compare our herbicide programs now, we have gone up significantly. We're using a lot of residuals now compared to back before resistance. We just have to overlap our residual herbicides. We're using, in our pre's, we're using a lot of Warrant, Reflex. For example, in our pre's in cotton, and then we're just very expensive. A lot of growers are just putting the money in the residual herbicides, and we're also spending a lot of money on hand weeding. But to get to your question about, is there a custom or just a blanket herbicide program? No, every situation is different. Some folks have gotten on the Liberty bandwagon. They're using a lot of Liberty-type programs. And some folks are, for example, in this area here, the Moultrie area, which is South Georgia, we're still making a rounded ready system work. Some folks have gotten to high residue-type conservation systems, gotten the rolling rye. There's a little bit of interest in that. So there's a lot of different systems approach that we're taking, to combat, glyphosate-resistant palm red moran.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
Well, this one is for Paul. This is
Yes, ma'am.
And you had talked about some of the guys who weren't able to put a cover crop down on those preventive planted acres. Is there anything those guys can do for 2015? Because I imagine they're going to have quite a seed bank of those weeds.
No question. I would say to back up probably a step, most of my growers, I'm going to say probably 60 to 70% of them did a pretty decent job at keeping their preventative plant acres and their crop acres clean this year. There's no question about that. But it's the other 30 to 40% that did not do a very good job or did nothing in some situations. You're absolutely right. We're certainly going to be dealing with quite a seed bed next year. A lot of the acres that were not planted in 2014, it sounds like most of those, from what I've seen so far, are going to be going to corn, regardless of what rotation we're in or what the intention was in 2014. So there again, pre's are going to be very important. Getting a pre down and following with not just a glyphosate application, but some kind of a broadleaf herbicide in a timely fashion. And quite frankly, some of these fields are going to have to be sprayed at least twice, if not 3 times, for broadleaves. Some of those preventative plant acres, or what we have found work good for us with our giant ragweed situation. The sonic herbicide works real good pre-emerge. Been doing a wonderful job on our giant ragweed, holding it back. We are starting to increase rates, just hoping to extend our residual out a little bit farther. Most of our beans in this geography go in mid-May, and usually by that first or second week of August, some of our sonic starts to break, and some of the giant ragweed starts to come through that. So we're going to start upping the rate a little bit and see if we can just lengthen our residual out a bit more.
Thank you. Any other questions from the media partners at this point? We'll move on to a little different topic. Yeah, earlier, Paul, you mentioned the 2,4-D and the dicamba technology, trait technology that's coming that will allow crops to be oversprayed with combinations of glyphosate and those technologies. Jeremy, is that something that you're seeing, looking forward to in Georgia as well, and how is that going to change your approach to weed resistance management?
So you're asking about the dicamba technology?
Yes. Yep.
I work in an area where we have a lot of vegetable production, a lot of peppers, a lot of cabbage, a lot of cantaloupes, watermelons. I think this auxin technology is another tool that we can use to manage weed resistance. But we also got to preserve this glufosinate technology, and if we can do that too, if we can keep all these tools, we'll at least have something to we would at least have a pick of technologies to manage glyphosate-resistant palmer amaranth. So I think the dicamba technology or the 2,4-D technology is just another tool that we can use in the systems approach.
Yeah, they're not really new. Paul, how will it change? Will it change what your approach is to weed control or managing resistant weeds?
As Jeremy said, I look at it as another tool in the toolbox. Are either one of them going to be the answer to weed control in south central Minnesota? Not 110%, we know that. But it's going to be using these technologies in addition to what we're using already, pre-herbicides and those kind of things, to get on top of our resistance and quite frankly, keep more weeds from developing resistance.
Yeah, I think both of you mentioned that there was a lot of rainfall last year, and that growers, the residual products that growers used were not as effective as they could be, and they were heavily relying on post treatments to manage weeds. That presents a real challenge against some of these resistant weed species that you're dealing with. And I mean, how are you planning on reinforcing with your growers the need to go back and use a pre in 2015? Either Jeremy or Paul, please.
Jeremy, I'll go first once, Jeremy. Most of the pre's that we got are, as I said, a lot of our crop, a chunk of our crop never even got planted. So a lot of the pre's didn't get on, even on some of the corn that did get planted, and or soybeans, the pre's didn't get on either. It really limits you as far as options go. And sometimes coming off a year like this is a good reminder to these growers that we can't take the chance of planting the crop and expect to get it sprayed in June. A lot of my growers in my area will say, well, that's, all that's fine and dandy, we'll get it pre on, but we still got to get our post-emerge products on, and we try to do some aerial applications in our area in June. For post-emerge wheat, corn, and or soybeans, but quite frankly, it's hard to do a decent job with aerial application. We can't kill weeds with full rates in 15 to 20 gallons of water. How can we expect an airplane spraying 3 to 5 gallons of water to control weeds and get decent coverage? And let's face it, by the time we're going in there with an airplane, it's probably too late. Weeds are probably 6, 8, 10 inches tall, and we have a hard enough time killing them with, they said, 15 to 20 gallons of water in full rates, let alone trying to go 3 to 5 gallons of water by air.
Jeremy, comments?
What I tell my growers is that the residual herbicides are the foundation of my weed management programs. We got to overlap those residual herbicides. And when growers start talking about killing sickle pod or grasses, when I get questions about that, that means that our herbicide programs are doing a good job controlling glyphosate-resistant palmer amaranth. Because, with the Liberty or the 2,4-D or the dicamba technology that's coming out, you still got to be timely with all these chemistries. So, as acres get bigger, from sheer economics, growers are getting bigger. They're trying to cover more acres. Timely herbicide applications are a challenge for us. So if we can keep palmer from coming up, keeping them, if we keep the palmer from emerging, we start talking about other weeds. That means we're doing, we're winning the battle.
Yeah, so are there questions from the media for either Paul or Jeremy at this time?
I have a couple, if
Go
that's
ahead,
all right. Yeah, I want to start, Paul, first I want to start with you. With the wet spring you had in 2014, are you looking at maybe some even early pre-plant application rather than just pre-emerge? Because you know you can do that up here in Minnesota. Are you going to bring some of that back? I know that technology was pretty popular a few years ago. Is that a tactic you might use? And Jeremy, I have a question for you after that.
Ask the question again. I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's cutting out. You know, early pre-plant, not just pre-emerge. Do you do much of that? And would that have saved you in 2014? And are you looking at that for 2015?
Well, we're not looking at doing any of it in 2015, and we've gotten to the point in our geography now that when the soil conditions are fit to do anything, you got to be out there working the ground and getting the tillage done and getting your crop in as soon as possible. I have a hard enough time convincing my growers just to tell them when they're done planting corn and soybeans to get their pre-emerge products on, let alone asking them to wait for me to come out there with my sprayer and do a pre-plant, quite honest with you. Now, in the case of corn where we're spreading fertilizer, large amounts per acre of fertilizer on, I would say 60 to 70% of those in the spring are getting a pre-plant, pre-emerge product impregnated on the dry fertilizer.
Okay.
But it's gotten so important, increasingly important over the years to get this crop in that guys just don't want to take the time to park the planter or wait. Even wait for themselves to run across pre-emerge, or not pre-emerge, but pre-plant with a sprayer to get chemicals on. And when the weather is fit and the ground is fit around here, we got to go.
Right. The second question I had is, and hopefully this is coming through, is kind of for both of you on the auxin technologies. You know, you talk about your concern for drift. Have you seen each of the new formulations, for example, Ingenia or the on the dicamba side or the choline technology on the 2,4-D side? Have you seen them, and are you confident about their drift technologies? And the part two of that is, do you think the customer understands that you just don't put 2,4-D and dicamba on these new tech crops? Either one of you.
I'll go first again. I have not seen the new dicamba technology. I have seen the 2,4-D choline technology. Actually, I saw it about 2 years ago already, and I was very impressed. I'm convinced that they've got the volatilization piece taken care of on that, the 2,4-D choline piece. I've not seen the dicamba piece. It is going to take some education because there are guys that think they're just going to be able to come in and buy a jug of 2,4-D on the shelf that goes to their soybeans. There's no question that that's the case. It takes some education.
I mean, the economics in South Georgia are a little different. Do you think they'll be looking at the bargain too?
I hadn't really seen the dicamba and 2,4-D technology on a large scale. I've seen it in plots. You know, it's good technology, but we're going to have to educate our growers on drift and water droplet size, and it's going to be a good opportunity for Extension to come in and educate growers and industry people on how to use this technology effectively in a systems type approach to manage weed resistance.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge because there will be some off-site actions from these things, I think, and people will be looking for it, I think, and so it'll be a challenge, but no doubt good technology to help manage resistant weeds. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about Palmer amaranth and a little bit about giant ragweed. Are there in Georgia or Minnesota? I mean, what do you see on the horizon as far as emerging weed issues, weed management issues?
Well, I don't have Palmer amaranth this far north yet, although I hear it's getting closer and closer every year. Water hemp, tall water hemp is another nemesis in this geography here. Common ragweed has been increasingly hard to kill. So far, as I said before, giant ragweed is still my biggest nemesis. And you know, when we discovered we couldn't kill giant ragweed back in 2004, at that time we started tank mixes, not just And I think that has helped in our immediate geography to keep the water hemps and the world under control. But as time progresses here, I can see some other weeds. The tall water hemp is one of them. That's getting to be a bigger and bigger issue all the time. Common ragweed is coming back. Those are going to be my biggest battles in the next several years.
Paul, I think glyphosate-resistant palm amaranth's enough. We're still trying to educate growers on seed bank, pollen drift. We're trying to implement cover crops down here. It has rocked our world. So, it's increased our herbicide costs tremendously. We're using so many residuals now, and it's just got us scrambling down here. We're finally turning the corner. When I was in Macon County, it took us 4, 5, 6 years to dig out of that hole, and those growers finally turned the corner. The crops are a lot cleaner, both cotton, soy, peanuts, all that. But it's just once you get in that hole, it's just hard to climb out of it.
Yeah, so Jeremy, in your area in particular with Palmer, has that, would you say the situation is under control with the tools that we have, or can be managed with the tools that we have, or is there a real need for new modes of action out there to help use this? There's always a need for it, but are you able to manage with what you've got? It's just more expensive now?
It's just more expensive. We're just overlapping. Growers are finally getting on board with, a systems type approach. Putting out the pre's, making sure we have the pre's. We even got growers talking about rotating modes of action. One concern is, we're putting a lot of pressure on PPO herbicides in our pre's. We're using a lot of reflex in cotton and soybeans. We're using a lot of Valor and burn down. So, that's always a concern in the back of my mind about using a lot of PPO inhibitors. But, just the growers are finally on board with keeping the palmer from emerging, using a lot of residual herbicides, and trying to manage that pest so we don't have to use post-emerge herbicides. And, I think that's the trick to it. But, it just takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to hand weed, manage the seed bank. So, it takes definitely, there's not one silver bullet.
I have a question, Jeremy. You just mentioned the seed bank. It's my understanding that hand weeding is a very effective way to manage the seed bank, but also hand weeding is very expensive. Do you see growers being able to go away from hand weeding anytime soon as the herbicide programs get better, or will it get pretty much here to stay, and mainly because of the way it helps manage the seed bank?
Well, we've done work with deep turning. Some of these strip till fields hadn't been deep turned in a long time, so some folks are deep turning to manage the seed bank. That's one way to do it. Some folks are trying to do the high residue rye cover crop type systems. This year rye seed is short and it's very expensive. I've been getting questions on wheat, oats, stuff like that. So I don't know how much cover is going to go in down here due to the economics of it and due to commodity prices. We're just trying to survive, trying to figure out what to make money, this next coming up year, either with peanuts or cotton or whatever. But I think if you see a female Palmer amaranth out in that field, if it's 1, 10, or 20, I think you got to get out of the truck and get it, because Palmer's such a enormous seed producer. I think you always got a hand weed, in my opinion. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Other questions from any of the media partners?
Oh, this one is for Jeremy. when guys see that 1 or 10 or 20 plants in the field, do most of them get out there and do it? I mean, is there that knowledge to nip it in the bud?
Over the years, folks like Stanley Culpepper and Eric Prosco, when we have, in Georgia, we have weed management meetings now. We used to have cotton meetings or, peanut meetings, but also, in addition to those production meetings, we have weed management meetings. And, we've taught these growers down here that it's a numbers game. So a female Palmer Amaranth can make, 400,000 seed. That's a lot of seed. That's a lot that's going to come up in that spot next year. So, I think over the years we have educated those growers on, if that one gets by, there's going to be a bunch of them next year. So, yeah, I think they're going to get out of the truck now. We've been dealing with this for so long, and it's cost us a lot of money, weed resistance has. So, I think they're getting the point across about, hand weeding and not letting that one get by.
Okay, thank you. Paul, are you still with us?
He might have got snowed in.
So, I have a couple of more notes here. One is about, so there's weed resistance out there. We're working our tails off to manage it. Is disease resistance or insect resistance or other pest resistance, is that a worry for you guys at this time at all, or are you so focused on management of these weeds that that's pretty secondary at this point?
Fungicide resistance, like in peanuts or, like leaf spot and tebuconazole in some areas, the same mode of action is always a concern, but, the Palmer deal has been such a big issue down here that, that drives everything we do. If we can't get past Palmer, especially in dry land, then, it's going to cost us a lot of money. So, insect resistance, yeah, that's a problem. We got some issues with soybean loopers and stuff like that. You can ask Philip Roberts, but, I think Palmer takes center stage.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the media for Jeremy? And Jeremy, any other comments you'd like to make in general about the outlook for your growers for 2015?
Outlook for growers in 2015. Once we figure out what to plant down here in the south, the cotton market's kind of been struggling here lately. We've had some pretty decent peanut yields on the irrigated land. Soybean market shows a little bit of profit. Once we figure out what to grow, what to plant next spring, we still got to get with it. We still got to think about these herbicide programs and the residual programs. We can't, even though commodity prices are down a little bit, we still got to spend the money on the herbicide programs to get the harvest next year. So, we can't skimp on the residuals and stuff just because commodity prices are down, or let that one Palmer go, let that one female Palmer Amaranth go unpulled in the field just because of the commodity prices. So we still got to get with it. Still got to manage weed resistance, in down commodity prices.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think with that, we'll, unless there are any other comments, I'd like to thank Paul and Jeremy. It's obvious why they were chosen as Resistant Fighter of the Year award winners. Very knowledgeable and out there on the front lines trying to help with growers manage weed resistance. I'd like to thank them especially for joining us tonight. And then Gil and Carol and Willie, also thank you for joining us tonight. And we're going to keep doing these events. There will be an archive of this tape on resistancefighter.com. That's www.resistancefighter.com. And with that, I think we can sign off for tonight. And again, I appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Y'all have a good night.